So we already discovered that our attacker compromised this machine and also have a session to the Windows 2003 machine. So what we're going to do is we need to analyze what's going on with 2003 machine by looking at the memory, PK file, event log files, and things like that to figure out what's going on, what happened, and also we need to identify whether the domain controller is also compromised by the attacker, right? So we need to know that, and in order to know that, let's analyze the PK file first, or let's take a look at the log files. What kind of a log we have in the Windows 2003 machine? Okay, so these are I think those are text-based files. Change directory to event logs. Okay, and let's see one of these files header if this is any binary or it's text-based, but unfortunately the stupid Windows log file format is not exactly that we are looking for. So you still can use grep or whatever it is, but obviously it's going to be a little bit messy output. So that's why I'm not planning to use it. But of course you can open the EVT files with a Windows machine. So I have a Windows machine, I can open it, but I don't need this first because I already have 2 more resources and I have limited time to analyze these things. So what I'm going to do is I already have a connection I already know that there is a connection between the attacker's machine, the web server, and also the Windows 2003 machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at the PK file. So how big is the traffic? So we can figure out whether any data is being stolen or any other session is being established between these 2 guys. And also I need to know that whether the connection is also between the domain controller or the attacker is directly connected to the domain controller himself. So let's actually figure that out first, and then we can continue with the 2003. By the way, so we know that yeah, that's a really important question. So we know that the attacker connected to the Windows 2003 machine, but how this happened? So how do we know that the attacker find the password for Windows 2003? Even if they are inside, attacker and inside the firewall, there is a password protection in our system. So how did it happen? So I can easily say that the attacker doesn't know the password of the Windows 2003 machine. So how is this possible? How did he connect it? How can I find it?
Is there an open RDP session or something?
Yeah, let's take a look at what kind of sessions he had in the in the machine. So let me actually jump to the here, and let's take a look at the sessions that we have found before. So here we have an what is this machine, by the way? When we look at the Windows 2008 web server, right? Yes, web server has a notepad connection and local port on the system, and the attackers 4444 is the port. Okay, so this is good, and let's see what other ports this guy have, right? The connection, established connection between the web server and also the Windows 2003. So that is supposed to be, yes, this is the Windows 2003's IP address 1.10.0.1.100. So do you guys see any other connection between these 2? So we have 445.3389 connection between this machine and also this one. .10 is the domain controller. Remember the IP address of the domain controller 10.0.1.10. So this connection belongs to the domain controller. So we can understand that this is a closed session. We can understand that this guy is trying to connect to the 445 or 3389 of the domain controller, but we don't know whether it's been established or not. But apparently this is not an established session, it's a closed session. There might be 2 reasons, because one was established and it's not established anymore. Second, it tried to connect but couldn't find the username and password, but we don't know. We will figure it out. So, and here let's say 10.0. Okay, these are not. Okay, so I don't see a lot, and what I'm going to do is I need to take a look at the PK file that is being generated by this attacker. But this time I'm going to take a look at to the not only the packages from the outside the DMZ interface, but this time I'm going to look at to the inside the firewall. So what I'm going to do is, since I know that the attackers are already in this machine, but I need to know that I need to analyze this traffic. So since I have the PCAP file of this guy and also this guy, why don't I use this? Because this PCAP is too large to analyze. Of course, I can filter out and export to a smaller file to analyze, but let's keep it in place and let's use the PCAP of these files. So let's start with Windows 2003 and see what's going on this machine. Okay, so I'll open this PCAP file. Oh, it's already right here. So we have reasonably, small amount of package, 39,000. Of course, we can analyze by our eyes, but what we're going to do is we will use the same technique that we are using on Wireshark. Remember, when we open a package, we need to take a look at to the protocol hierarchy of the network capture so we can understand that what kind of packages we are seeing. So when I look at to this, there are IP version Ethernet packages. IP version 4 is the dominant. Okay, there are a little bit UDP, but majority of them are TCP. Okay, when I scroll down here, interesting though, I have remote desktop connection. I have NetBIOS here. NetBIOS is an interesting service. Usually, remember, when you see the NetBIOS traffic with a lot of package, that's a bad sign. We usually don't expect to see a lot of things unless you're not providing a file server service, things like that, okay? So NetBIOS seems a little bit interesting service to me. And also LDAP here, Kerberos here, distributed computing environment. So this is a bad sign. When I see distributed computing environment, remote procedure call, protocol, I usually feel bad because you know what this service does? This allows you to run and serve, a code on a target server with using Microsoft Endpoint Mapper service. So it's a really dangerous service. I usually don't expect to see. So my curiosity is increased. NetBIOS a lot of, and RPC is also ran on this machine. So we have a bunch of services going on here, and IGMP here, ICMP here, address resolution protocol here. So what is the best candidate that I can take a look at here in this PCAP file? Definitely NetBIOS, right? So I need to focus on NetBIOS traffic to find out what kind of things that I can find on it. Okay, so let's look at to the IP dot address equal to 10.0. What was the IP address of my 1.101? No, it doesn't necessarily have to be the destination, but I'm only interested in between the web server and also the Windows 2003. That's why I just write only 1.2.0. Okay, so let's see. If I scroll down here, see that there are 32,000, but I am specifically looking at the NetBIOS packages. So here are some NetBIOS packages, and actually, let me take a look to the some of the interesting stuff here. So that is the problem now. So here we have the NetBIOS, the SMB protocol here going on. And I see that this is a Windows 2003 machine. So challenge authorized user is nothing. See that? That's actually a null user. So it's only /nothing. That means anonymous user. So anonymous users are dangerous. And we know that there's a famous actually there are multiple vulnerabilities with anonymous users, but one of the famous and latest one is the Eternal Blue. But this couldn't be that because this capture is captured in 2015, and unfortunately in those days I didn't have this zero-day vulnerability. That's why the Eternal Blue is not the subject. But we can take a look at that and take analyze the traffic and also the parse traffic here. So in SMB handler session setup, okay, seems interesting. Login failure here. Again, try something. So IPC dollar here, and IPC. If they're after IPC dollar, a lot of things are going on here, and also here we have the remote procedure call going on. So that becomes a really interesting thing. So let me actually make it a little bit smaller here. And also here we have a lot of packages are going on here. Things are going on, but at this point, really interesting thing happened, right? So it was good. I was having a good conversation between the SMB, packages, but suddenly, after this one, 7 milliseconds later, I have a connection to my command and control center port number, right? So that's an interesting thing that I wasn't expecting to see. So something has happened between right here, right? So I need to take a look at that. And here the RightX, SMB, and also NetPath canal localized. So this is the very famous keywords. So if you are talking about distributed computing environment, and if you are talking about NetPath canal localized, and also if you are looking at a path, something like this, that is something that you should search on Google. This analysis of these things, Rapid7 or even Microsoft DB and whatever it is. So when you analyze that, this vulnerability is exploiting a problem on distributed, DCP and RPC protocol using SMB, and also there is a problem NetPath canal localized function. That's why we have this famous module, which is Windows exploit MS0867 NetAPI problem. So we understand that this guy is exploited Windows 2003 MS08067 vulnerability to get a remote code execution shell, right? So we're in a position that we already have this connection is established by exploiting this thing. And we know that there might be no chance that this conversation is supposed to be completed in a normal way, but it's not going in a normal way. That's why we decided that this is a exploitation, and we see that there are a lot of things going on here. Okay, so we understand that this machine is also compromised, right, by exploiting the known vulnerability on Windows systems. So that's why the attacker doesn't need any password, username and password. That's why he still can compromise the machine by exploiting a known vulnerability. Okay, so we're in a position that this is your point now. We were I'm seeing that here, and there were no domain available, but this guy is in domain, which is in this domain, right? So we're in a position that an attacker can easily grab the memory of the compromised machine, and also analyze that memory to find out the domain administrator either hash or password, right? So if you do the analysis on this Windows 2003, you will see that there is a password available in the memory. So let's take a look at that and let's analyze by ourselves too. So we have the memory, and we wanted to make sure that whether there is really a Windows domain administrator password available for that. So I will use my volatility command here to actually let me find that command, because it's really hard for me to write that. I need to look at the PS list because I want to see that if there is any interesting processes going on here. So when I look at it, I don't see an interesting process here, but it doesn't mean that you don't have any malware, of course. But in my interesting process in this case is what? The guy who has the connection, right? Yeah, or maybe sessions. Let's see. Okay, great. So we have the connections to PID 548, 888. So this process have the connection between the web server and also this one. So that's why the process 888 here is the problem, okay? So what I like to do, I want to know that if this 888 process have any other connection, or the process that has been connected to the domain controller may be something that is unexpected. So as far as I see, when I look at it, there is some connections between the our Windows server and also the domain controller. But we can analyze one by one. But if I were in, I was in this position actually, I think that if this is compromised, probably there might be passwords in the memory. So that's the first time. That's the first thing that we look for in a compromised machine. So in my pen testing, for example, whenever I compromise something, I always look for the memory. So I think that this hacker should also do the same thing. So when you look for the memory to hash the password, so you can use this thing, LSA dump or hash dump. Let me try LSA dump. If it doesn't work, I will try hash dump too. So this actually, volatility module helps us to find the hashes or LSA secrets in the memory. So if I see that there are domain administrator exists here, we can easily assume that this server can easily compromise, or the domain administrator credential can easily be used by the attacker. So these are not the one that I'm looking for. No. Okay, no, I don't see the LSA dump here. Let's try hash dump here. So by the way, LSA dump is also useful if you are using, let's say, in-memory encryption, if you are doing a Windows, crypto APIs and things like that. It will also give you an idea. So when I do that, I see that administrator exists. And interesting though, so here's the problem. That's how I understand crack the password. Actually, that password wasn't in the dictionary. So this has the LM hash. So this part is actually the TLM hash, and this part is the LM hash. If you have LM hash, doesn't matter how complex is your password is always 7 character long. Because in LM, the password is split into 7 characters, two, and then hashed only these 7 characters, and then together they are going to construct this number. So if you have 20 character password, what's going to happen? You have only 27 characters password. You don't have 20 characters. If you type only the first 14 characters, you still can log into the Windows system.
What system is this?
Windows 2003. It's a old version, LM, LAN Manager hash book. This is yeah.
It still reverts to that in 2008, right? Unless you do past 14 characters, then it goes to.
Yeah, exactly. And the second thing is usually Active Directory systems are coming from the past. Usually administrators upgrade their systems, but the problem is they sometimes don't upgrade their first level. If you don't upgrade your first level, you still may continue to keep the old LM hash. The new users will not going to have the LM hash, but the old ones will always continue to have this one unless you explicitly upgrade the domain first level. So here we have the administrator. Of course, you can use this hash to crack the password. So Braid actually did a great job to crack the password. I just surprised her. What's going on here? And I realized that there's an LM hash here. So, okay. And this administrator will allow the attacker to do some attacks. And also, by the way, this is the local administrator password, by the way. It's not a domain administrator. But here's a chance that this administrator may use exactly the same password with the domain administrator, or maybe this password might be available for another user that he can log into the domain controller. So both of them are possible. In this case, we actually can easily think that the attacker can jump to the domain controller. But I don't see any connection between and at least any illegal connection between the domain controller and the web server. So how can I find out whether the domain controller is being compromised or not? I will take a look at the domain controller's pickup file, or maybe the memory file, right? So that's going to be the last thing that we're going to do. What's this? Okay, yeah. By the way, does anybody understand what these 2 files means? So this one, actually, I just put that for a little bit spoiler. We will come back to that point. But first, let's find the whether there is any connection between my web server to the memory, whatever it is, the domain controller, to see if it is illegal. Okay, what I'm going to do is I will analyze this time the memory file of DC. Okay, so process Wireshark, dump pcap, okay, system Google updates. Here we have Notepad exe, belongs to who, Explorer, not bad. So this guy Notepad.exe, do you think it's a legal notepad? Seems legal because it's been opened by Explorer, and Explorer being opened by WinLogon seems a legitimate thing for me. And here we have other processes, and still seems fine to me. So I believe that either the attacker find any exploitation on this domain controller or use the same password to legally log into the domain controller, and this is how we're going to make sure. So first of all, we have that closed session, but let's see if the if we can see any open connection here, and also we will take a look at the PCAP file. If that PCAP file shows us that there is something going on between the closed PID, that's the DNS executable, and let's say grep -v dns.exe. Okay, let me scroll up here and let's see. 10.0.1.101, right? My attacker's IP address. Oh, there are a lot of things going on. I wish I just grabbed only that part instead of saying grep -e. Let me give a last try, okay? Grep 10.0.1.101. And let's say, do you think I should also keep Windows 2003? I don't think so, because we already checked from Windows 2003. We don't see any connection. And if I see here something between these two guys, so I can say that this connection is established. By the way, while it's doing that analysis, let's open this PCAP file with Wireshark to take a look at that. If this closed connection have some packages in the PCAP file. I just would like to see the PCAP file, and I will say that IP.source is going to be 10.0.1.101. Why I'm looking for only source from here? Because I wanted to see that if this guy is connecting to the DC, if DC is connecting back, that's another story. But for now, I wanted to see that this guy is really trying to connect that. And remember that the attack time was 19 something, right, at PM. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the VIV of the time format to day of time, like this, okay? That's what I teach you guys, actually. I should supposed to take a look at that. Okay, TCP and NetBIOS. We have a lot of packages going on here between these two guys. By the way, when you open the protocol hierarchy, when you have a filter, remember this is the filter packages analysis, okay? So that's why we see that this is the packages going on between these two guys. So I can take a look at the DCRPC, but this time there is no exploitation exist. I can assure you guys. So when you look at that, you will see that there are legitimate packages. So if you don't see any exploitation, that means you guys cannot make sure that this is an exploitation. So actually, when you see something like this, so remember this also have the encrypted traffic, but it's remote desktop protocol, right? So there is only one way to establish a remote desktop connection if you have only the valid username and password, because we don't know a known vulnerability to exploit the remote desktop protocol. So I believe that this one is either use the SMB or remote desktop. So let's give it a try and try to and TCP.port is equal to 3389. And remember, yes, that's what I was looking for actually. That's why I was trying to get this result to show up. Remember, here we have a closed session by Notepad, and the port was 3389. So when we look at that 3389, we see that a lot of packages going on remote desktop protocol, and this process is being initiated by Notepad, right? It's interesting. So look at the source port is 49181. It's the upper bigger port, and probably this is the same port right here. Okay, yeah, close actually. Multiple sessions going on, and this is the last one. And remember, these guys were run before, and then the last port that's being used by our attacker machine was the 49197, and this one is 49198, 196. So obviously this has been this is a legitimate remote desktop protocol. Unfortunately, we cannot see the content of this traffic unless you don't have the remote desktop protocol keys, the certificate. So we can of course grab it from the disk image and try to decrypt this traffic, but it's out of the scope for this course. So okay, and we finally understand that the attack, let's take a look at the attack pattern. Okay, so our attack is started from the outside. Remember, the attacker tried to find some, first he finds some vulnerable web service, and there was a SQL injection vulnerability, but remember, he doesn't exploit the SQL injection. Maybe he exploited the SQL injection too, right? But remember, he used the compromised machine by looking at the test web page, right? So the test web page allowed the attacker to upload some files. One of them is shell, the other one is the executable file, and he ran the executable file by using the shell to compromise this web server, and then by exploiting the known vulnerability on Windows 2003, he compromised, he got a shell to this server, and he found an administrative credentials on this server to log on to the domain controller. And if you look at this file, actually I grabbed this from the event logs. This is actually the worst thing that you want to see when you are analyzing your incident. So this is volume shadow copy. Volume shadow copy stands for to grab the Active Directory database while the Active Directory is still running. So Microsoft allows you to create a shadow copy of on a running Active Directory system. When you create a shadow copy, you can copy the NTDS file and also security heap to decrypt the password offline. So that is the worst thing that we would like to see. And here's the worst news. So we know that also the attacker compromised a lot of things from the SQL databases, because the SQL logs shows us that there are a lot of things going on. And also the Active Directory database is also being compromised. Any question? Yep.
I did it a different way. After I saw that SMB and the DCP cap was being used, I went to File, Export Objects, and then exported all the SMB objects.
Yep. Definitely, that also works. Yeah, if you're talking about SMB traffic, yeah, actually, you can do this. When in the file object on file menu, you can choose SMB here. Wireshark smart enough to find out all the files here. So for example, these are the files transferred during the SMB session. So definitely there are some memory capture files, copied, WinPM here, and also supposed to be ntds.dit here. Where is that? Yes, right here. Look, this file. Very good. Wait. So ntds file is the problem that you should see. Okay. So this solves our problem. At least there are a lot of things, but this is how we can at least analyze this incident and address the right problems. Any other question, guys? I hope you enjoy this